The perfect life shattered. It was a quiet evening, the kind of night where everything seemed to fall into place. The air was crisp, and the soft hum of the streetlights outside Mark's window created a comforting, familiar atmosphere. He had just finished dinner, and everything felt calm. He sat back in his favorite chair, a book in hand, when his phone buzzed on the table. He glanced at it, expecting a simple message, but it was a call from his best friend, John. John rarely called. This late? Mark hesitated for a second, then answered, expecting the usual friendly conversation. But what he heard on the other end of the line was nothing he could have prepared for. Double quotes, Mark. I need you to come over. John's voice was shaky, full of panic, unlike anything Mark had ever heard from him. Please hurry. Something's happened. Mark's heart began to race. What's going on, John? What happened? He asked, his voice filled with concern. I can't explain over the phone, John replied. Just get here, please. It's bad. Mark immediately stood up, a sense of unease settling deep in his stomach. John sounded frantic, like something was terribly wrong. He grabbed his jacket, his mind racing with questions, but he couldn't come up with any answers. What could possibly have happened that would make John so upset? As Mark drove to John's house, his mind kept spinning. He and John had been friends for years, and they'd shared countless conversations, laughs, and even difficult moments. But this call, this urgency in John's voice was different. It felt like the calm before a storm. When Mark arrived at John's house, the lights in the living room were dimmed, and there was an eerie silence in the air. John's car was parked out front, but the house looked strangely still. Mark knocked on the door and waited. He didn't have to wait long. John opened it almost immediately, looking pale and visibly shaken. Mark, John said, barely able to keep his voice steady. Come inside. I don't know how to say this, but something happened tonight. Mark followed John into the house, his heart racing with every step. John led him to the living room, where he sank onto the couch, his hands trembling. Mark stood in front of him, unsure of what to say. John, what's going on? Mark asked again, his voice filled with concern. What happened? John looked up at Mark, his eyes filled with confusion and anger. It was clear that whatever had happened was weighing heavily on him. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out at first. After a long pause, he finally spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. I caught Sarah. My wife, I caught her with another man. Mark felt like the ground had shifted beneath him. His best friend, someone he knew and trusted, had just said the one thing Mark never thought he would hear. John's wife, Sarah, was the picture of loyalty and grace. Their marriage seemed perfect, at least. That's how it appeared to everyone who knew them. They had built a life together that was enviable to most, a life full of love and stability. But now, here John was, sitting in front of him, broken and defeated, revealing the unthinkable. I came home early from work tonight, John continued, his voice filled with disbelief. I didn't expect to see anything unusual, but when I walked into the bedroom, I saw them. Sarah and him. Mark's mind struggled to process what John was saying. Who? Who is he? Mark asked, his voice tight. I don't know, John replied, shaking his head. I've never seen him before. He wasn't anyone from our circle of friends or family. He was a stranger, and Sarah. Sarah didn't even try to hide it. She was just sitting there, like nothing was wrong. John's voice cracked with emotion as he spoke, the pain of betrayal radiating from him. Mark could see the hurt in his eyes, the confusion that came with being blindsided by someone he thought he knew better than anyone. It was the kind of pain that only comes from realizing that the person you trust most has betrayed you in the most intimate way. Mark sat down beside John, his mind racing. He had never seen his best friend so vulnerable, so broken. "John, I'm so sorry," Mark said softly, trying to offer some comfort. "What did Sarah say? What happened after you saw them?" John took a deep breath, his hands gripping the edge of the couch. "She didn't even deny it. She didn't apologize. She just sat there staring at me. And when I asked her why she would do this, she said she couldn't explain it. She said she felt trapped and didn't know how to get out of it." Mark's heart sank. The words stung. He couldn't imagine the depth of John's pain. The shock of being betrayed by someone who was supposed to be his partner for life. This wasn't just about an affair. It was about the complete breakdown of trust. The unraveling of a marriage Mark had always thought was uncheckable. "I don't know what to do, Mark," John whispered, his voice barely audible. "I don't know if I can fix this. I don't even know if I want to anymore." Mark sat with his best friend in silence for a moment, both of them feeling the weight of the situation. Mark knew this was just the beginning. The storm that had just started would shake everything in John's life, and nothing would be the same again. Asterisk the confession and the unraveling John's silence hung in the air, thick and heavy, like the weight of the truth he was still trying to digest. Mark sat beside him, not knowing exactly how to comfort him. What words could he offer to fix something so shattered? How could he offer solace when the betrayal was so deep, so raw? It wasn't just an affair, it was the breaking of a bond Mark had seen as unbreakable. The perfect marriage, the ideal life, was now in ruins. "John, I'm so sorry," Mark said softly, placing a hand on his friend's shoulder. "I can't imagine how you must feel right now, but you're not alone. In this, we'll figure it out." John looked up at him, his eyes hollow and filled with pain. "How do you figure out something like this, Mark? How do you fix a marriage that's been built on lies? I thought I knew Sarah. I trusted her with everything. And now I don't even know who she is." Mark sighed, knowing this wasn't something that could be fixed overnight, but his friend needed support. He needed to know that whatever happened next, he wasn't facing it alone. "You need to talk to Sarah," Mark said gently. "You can't start moving forward until you hear it from her. You need to know the whole truth, whatever it is." John ran his hands through his hair, clearly overwhelmed by the thought. "I don't even know where to start. I walked in on the most humiliating thing of my life, and she just sat there. She didn't even seem surprised to see me. It's like she's been preparing for this moment, and I was just the last to know." Mark could see the anger bubbling beneath the surface, the hurt turning into something darker. "It sounds like she's already made up her mind. But you have to hear her side. This betrayal isn't just about the affair. It's about everything else she hasn't told you, the reasons behind it." John nodded slowly, the weight of his decision settling over him. "You're right. I need to talk to her. I need answers." The next morning, John sat in his car outside their home, staring at the front door. The sun was barely up, and the world felt eerily quiet. His heart was pounding in his chest, the uncertainty of what was to come weighing heavily on him. Was he ready to face the woman he had loved for so long? Did he even want to hear the truth, or was it easier to live with? The mystery? He had called Sarah earlier, asking her to meet him at home. She had agreed, though her voice had sounded distant, almost resigned. She knew this conversation was inevitable, but John couldn't shake the feeling that she was already preparing herself for whatever came next. Taking a deep breath, he stepped out of the car and walked toward the door. It creaked open, the familiar scent of home greeting him with a strange, unfamiliar sting. Sarah was sitting on the couch, her body tense, her eyes red from crying. But she didn't look surprised to see him. She had expected him to come, and that realization hit John harder than anything else. "I'm here," John said, trying to sound composed, but his voice wavered. We need to talk. Sarah looked up at him, her face pale. I know, she whispered, her voice barely audible. I don't know how to explain this, John. I never meant for it to happen this way, but I can't hide the truth anymore. John sat down across from her, his hands clenched tightly together. I don't even know where to begin. I caught you with another man. How long has this been going on, Sarah? She looked down at her hands, the guilt on her face. Almost unbearable to watch. It's been months, John. I never meant to hurt you. It started as something small, an emotional connection, but then it turned into more, and I couldn't stop it. I didn't know how to tell you. John's heart sank as the words left her mouth. He had suspected something was wrong, but hearing it from her made it feel real, like the world he had known was crashing down around him. Why didn't you? Tell me, he asked, his voice thick with hurt. Why didn't you come to me before this? You let it go on for so long. Sarah's face crumpled with regret. I didn't know how. I felt trapped. I thought I could fix things without you finding out. But then it got out of control, and I didn't know how to stop it. I was scared. John repeated, his voice rising with disbelief. Scared of what? Losing me? You were already losing me the moment you started keeping secrets. This isn't just about the affair, Sarah. It's about everything you kept from me, everything you hid. Sarah looked at him, her eyes full of tears. I never wanted to hurt you, but I've been unhappy for a long time. I didn't know how to talk to you about it. I didn't think you'd understand. Mark had always believed in the sanctity of marriage, the bond between two people who trusted each other. But now, as he sat there watching his best friend face the devastating truth, he realized just how fragile everything was. Trust, once broken, couldn't be easily repaired. And even though Sarah seemed remorseful, her actions had already created a rift that couldn't be undone. What happens now? John asked, his voice quieter, more resigned. I don't know, Sarah replied, her voice trembling. I don't know what I want anymore, or what I can do to make this right. All I know is I'm sorry, but I understand if you can't forgive me. John sat in silence, the weight of the conversation pressing down on him. He didn't have all the answers, and he didn't know what would happen next. But he knew one thing for sure. His life, his relationship, had just changed forever. Asterisk the final choice. The silence between John and Sarah hung heavy, thick with the weight of words unspoken. John's mind raced as he processed everything Sarah had just admitted. The anger he felt towards her was intense, but even more than that, there was a deep sorrow and overwhelming sadness that he couldn't shake. Sarah had been the person he trusted more than anyone else, and now that trust was shattered. His entire world felt like it was crumbling beneath him. The room seemed colder now, the once warm and familiar space now a battlefield of emotions. The person he had once considered his partner in everything, his confidant, his best friend, had betrayed him in the worst possible way. And yet, despite the hurt, there was a part of him that still wanted to fix it, to somehow find a way to put things back together. Do you even know what you've done, Sarah? John asked, his voice low and tight with emotion. You've torn apart everything we had. I don't even know who you are anymore. Sarah's face twisted with regret, her eyes filled with tears as she reached out to him. I know, she whispered, her voice shaking. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just ... I just wanted to explain. I didn't want to lose you, but I know I already have. John stared at her, his mind a swirl of emotions. He felt a deep, bitter anger, but there was also a part of him that still cared. A part of him that wanted to understand why. Why had Sarah done this? Why hadn't she come to him first? Why hadn't she given him the chance to help her? You say you didn't want to lose me, John said, his voice breaking, but you chose to do something that would destroy us. You didn't think about me. about what this would do to us. You didn't even care enough to come to me with the truth before everything fell apart." Sarah's sobs filled the room as she dropped her head into her hands. "I know," she cried. "I'm so sorry. I never meant for it to go this far. It just it just happened. I don't know how it did, but it did. And now I'm afraid it's too late to fix anything." John stood up, his frustration bubbling over. "Too late? You don't get to say it's too late. I'm the one who's been lied to, Sarah. I'm the one who's been living in a lie. So don't tell me it's too late. You don't get to make that decision." He walked across the room, trying to calm himself, but the rage was too much to control. He had given Sarah everything, his trust, his heart, his future. And now it felt like she had taken all of that and crushed it underfoot. But in the middle of all the chaos, a thought flickered through his mind. What if this wasn't the end? What if somehow there was a way for them to start over? Maybe, just maybe, they could rebuild the trust that had been destroyed. But was he ready to forgive her? Could he even try? Turning back to Sarah, John found her sitting on the couch, her head bowed, her body curled in on itself. The sight of her pain made his heart ache. Even though the anger still simmered within him, "I don't know what to do anymore, John," admitted quietly. "I don't know if I can forgive you, but I don't want to give up on us. I don't know if I should even try, but I'm willing to listen. I want to know the truth. I need to know what led to this. You owe me that much." Sarah looked up at him, her eyes red and swollen from crying. She nodded, her voice hoarse. "I'll tell you everything, John. I owe you that. I just ... I don't know where to start. There's so much I've kept from you, and I don't know how to explain it all." John sat down across from her, taking a deep breath. His heart was still pounding, and the anger hadn't completely faded, but he knew he needed answers. He needed to understand what had happened to the woman he had loved for so long. "Start from the beginning," John said quietly. "Tell me why this happened. What went wrong? Why didn't you come to me?" Sarah wiped her eyes and took a shaky breath. "I've been unhappy for a while, John. I didn't know how to talk to you about it. I thought if I kept it hidden, it would go away, but it didn't. The man I've been seeing, he made me feel alive again. He made me feel like someone who wasn't just stuck in a routine. I know it was wrong, but I didn't know how to stop it." John's heart sank as she spoke. He had suspected something was wrong, but hearing it from her mouth, hearing the depth of her feelings, it crushed him. This wasn't just an affair. It was the loss of something far deeper. She had fallen out of love with him, and instead of telling him, she had turned to someone else. "Why didn't you come to me?" John repeated, his voice almost a whisper. "Why didn't you just tell me you were unhappy? Why go behind my back?" Sarah's voice cracked as she spoke. "I didn't know how to tell you, John. I didn't know if you'd understand. I thought maybe if I just let it happen, I could find myself again. But I was wrong, and now I've lost everything." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The weight of the conversation hung in the air, and neither knew what to do next. The damage had been done. Trust had been broken, and Sarah's betrayal was something John would never forget. But in the midst of the pain, something else lingered in John's mind, the question of what comes next. Could he forgive her? Should he try to rebuild what they had, or was it already too late? The silence stretched on, and John didn't know if he had the strength to make the decision. Would he choose to move forward with Sarah, or would he walk away and leave their past behind?